Okay, get ready, because today we're going to dive into some really intense stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We're tackling Healing Her Heart by Laura Scott.
It's the first book in her Crystal Lake series.
And let me tell you, this story will grab you right from the start.
And it just doesn't let go.
So we're going to unpack some heavy themes here.
Like domestic abuse.
We'll see how those dynamics play out in a small town.
And really see how human connection can be a lifeline in the face of adversity.
Powerful stuff.
What really gets me about this story is that it doesn't shy away from the harsh realities at all.
It doesn't sugarcoat anything.
Nope. You see how abuse affects everyone, not just the victim.
It ripples outward.
Exactly. And it makes you think.
It really does.
And it kind of forces you to question things.
Yeah.
Even maybe to confront some hard truths.
About ourselves and our communities.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, how do you even begin to help someone who's trapped in this cycle of abuse?
Right.
But maybe they don't even see it.
Or they're just too terrified to break free.
It's a tough situation.
Definitely. And the story throws us right into this dilemma with Larissa.
Our protagonist,
She's an ER nurse who moved to Crystal Lake for a fresh start,
trying to escape a bad relationship.
back in Chicago.
She seems dedicated to her work.
Oh, yeah. And she finds comfort in running,
But you can tell her past trauma is always there.
lurking beneath the surface.
And then she meets Annie Hinkle
Who comes into the ER
with a wrist injury.
that just screams domestic abuse.
But Annie insists she just fell off the porch.
Classic. But come on.
This is where the story gets really intense.
Totally. Larissa, with her own past,
She sees right through it,
immediately,
but she has to be careful.
because she's bound by professional ethics.
And legal stuff.
Right.
She can't just force Annie to admit the truth.
Or make her seek help.
It's frustrating.
It's so frustrating.
Watching someone walk into danger.
And you can't do anything to stop them.
Exactly. And it's not just Larissa who sees it.
Dr. Gabe Allen.
Another ER doc.
He also suspects abuse.
But their hands are tied. It's like a real-life dilemma that medical professionals face all the time.
They're trained to heal physical wounds.
But what about the deeper stuff?
The psychological and emotional trauma.
And domestic abuse.
Right. They see the signs. They want to help.
But without the victim's cooperation,
There's only so much they can do.
makes you think, what would you do if you were in Larissa's shoes?
It does.
Easy to judge from the outside looking in.
Much harder when you're in the thick of it.
Absolutely.
The story doesn't offer any simple solutions.
Which is actually one of its strengths.
Totally. It forces us to face the truth.
That there's no one-size-fits-all answer to domestic abuse.
Nope.
And then there's Annie's son, Tommy.
Oh, yeah. He's a bit of a wild card.
He almost runs Larissa over on the running trail.
With his motorbike.
Adds another layer of tension for sure.
Tommy's behavior is interesting.
It is.
Makes you wonder about the cycle of violence.
Right.
Is he copying his dad?
Like, is this learned behavior?
Makes you think about the long-term impact.
Of growing up in a home with abuse?
It's a small detail.
But it packs a punch.
It really makes you think.
About how abuse affects everyone.
Not just the victim.
And then we gotta consider Crystal Lake.
Right.
It's a small town.
Where everyone knows everyone's business.
Do you think that affects how people react to Annie's situation?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
It's not stated outright in the story.
But you can feel that small town dynamic.
People hesitate to speak out.
They don't want to rock the boat.
Makes sense.
There's this sense that everyone's watching and judging.
And whispering behind closed doors.
It makes people afraid to get involved.
Or maybe they don't want to believe that something so awful could happen.
In their perfect little town.
Right.
It's like that silence
That reluctance to step in.
can be just as damaging as the abuse itself.
It creates an environment where victims feel totally alone.
Shame.
Afraid to seek help.
But even with this incredibly complex situation with Annie,
Yeah.
Larissa doesn't just forget about her.
No, she doesn't.
When her shift ends,
She goes above and beyond.
she gives Annie her personal phone number.
And offers her a safe space to reach out.
That's risky.
It is blurring those lines between professional and personal.
But you can tell Larissa is driven by this deep desire to help.
To make a difference.
It's that internal conflict.
Wanting to help, but knowing the potential consequences.
That's what makes Larissa such a compelling character.
She's not a superhero here.
No, she's a real person.
Just trying to navigate this really difficult situation.
And do the right thing.
Even when it's hard.
And speaking of compelling characters,
Okay.
we have Dr. Gabe Allen.
He's got his own baggage.
He was falsely accused of sexual harassment by his ex.
Heavy stuff.
How do you think that shapes his interactions with Annie and Larissa?
That's a fascinating aspect of Gabe.
It is.
I mean, he's been deeply betrayed.
It's made him guarded.
Cynical, even.
Yeah, but there's something about Larissa.
Her strength.
her compassion,
He's drawn to it.
and he sees Annie's pain. It's like he recognizes a bit of himself in both of them,
Maybe.
that struggle to heal.
To fight for justice.
And then there's the chemistry between him and Larissa.
Oh, yeah.
Can't deny it.
That scene when he helps her after she sprains her ankle.
All that forced proximity.
Gentle touches.
You can feel that tension building.
Absolutely.
But they're trying to keep it professional.
Especially with Gabe's past.
And hospitals no dating policy.
Tricky situation.
And Larissa's just getting back on her feet.
After leaving her own abusive relationship.
So she might be hesitant.
To jump into something new.
Especially with someone carrying so much baggage.
It's that classic push and pull.
The attraction is there.
But so are the doubts and fears.
And don't forget the small town backdrop.
Adds another layer of complexity, for sure.
So what do you think? Will they give in to their feelings, or will their pasts and their jobs keep them apart?
That's the big question, isn't it? The story keeps us guessing.
Which just makes us want to dive even deeper.
And that's exactly what we're going to do.
We've only scratched the surface of healing her heart.
Stay tuned as we explore the twists and turns of this gripping story.
Unravel the characters.
And uncover the deeper truths that lie beneath the surface.
It's going to be a wild ride.
Buckle up.
Okay, so we left off with things kind of heating up between Larissa and Gabe.
Definitely a spark there.
But they're both hesitant.
Yeah, like they're both standing on the edge of a diving board afraid to jump in.
Makes sense. They've both been hurt before.
And the idea of a relationship?
Especially with a coworker.
Oh, yeah, that's tricky.
Especially in a small town like Crystal Lake.
Where everyone knows everyone's business.
Remember we were talking about those small town dynamics?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Think about how much harder it would be for them.
To have a relationship with everyone watching.
All those judging eyes.
And whispers.
Totally. And that small town pressure.
Could also be why Annie won't admit the truth about her husband.
Makes sense.
Imagine the fear of judgment.
The gossip.
The possibility of being ostracized.
By her own community.
It's a lot to carry.
It's heartbreaking, really.
It is.
And it makes you wonder how many other people in Crystal Lake are suffering in silence.
Afraid to speak up.
Because of what others might think.
It's a chilling thought for sure.
And it shows how insidious domestic abuse really is.
Thrives in secrecy.
In the shadows.
Where shame and fear keep victims trapped.
And it's not just the fear of what others think.
Right.
Remember, Larissa told Gabe about her own experience?
With her abusive ex?
She talked about blaming herself.
Like she deserved it.
That self-blame is a powerful weapon.
Abusers use it to control their victims.
So even if Annie wanted to leave Kurt,
yeah,
it wouldn't be that simple.
No, it wouldn't be like just packing a bag and walking out.
She's been conditioned to believe she's nothing without him.
That she can't survive on her own.
It's tragic.
It is. A lot of victims face this.
They're trapped by more than just physical violence.
Right. It's those invisible chains.
Fear, guilt, self-doubt.
Holding them captive.
It makes Larissa's efforts even more poignant.
She sees herself in Annie.
She remembers that terror and despair.
And she desperately wants to help Annie escape that.
But Larissa's own trauma.
Yeah.
It could be clouding her judgment.
Maybe.
She's so invested in helping Annie.
That she might miss some red flags.
Or make decisions based on emotion.
Rather than
like that classic dilemma.
Head versus heart.
And in Larissa's case,
both are pulling her in different directions.
It's a tightrope walk.
One wrong step.
And the consequences could be huge.
Speaking of missteps.
Oh, yeah?
Let's talk about Gabe going to church with Larissa.
It seems like a small thing.
But it speaks volumes about his character.
Remember how cynical he was at first?
Oh, yeah. Totally guarded.
Carrying all that baggage from his past.
But Larissa.
Her warmth.
Her sincerity.
Chipping away at that armor.
He's opening himself up.
To the possibility of connection.
Healing.
Of letting go of all that anger and resentment.
That's been eating him alive.
And he's willing to step outside his comfort zone.
By going to church with her?
Even though he doesn't believe in God.
Shows a real shift in his thinking.
He's choosing to be there for her.
Even if it means facing his own doubts.
And vulnerabilities.
And the sermon that day.
About forgiveness.
Powerful stuff.
It's like the story is subtly nudging Gabe.
And us as readers.
To think about forgiveness.
Not just for others.
But for ourselves.
It resonates with Gabe's struggle.
He's held on to that pain for so long.
From his ex-girlfriend's betrayal,
And it's poisoned everything.
his relationships.
His outlook on life?
The sermon makes him question if holding on to that anger is really helping him.
He starts to realize that forgiveness,
Isn't it about condoning what happened
it's about releasing himself from that pain.
so he can heal and move on?
It's a tough journey.
It takes courage.
And self-compassion.
But the story suggests it's a necessary step.
Toward finding peace and wholeness.
And it's not just Gabe
Right. Larissa's working through her own trauma, too.
trying to make peace with her past.
And reclaim her self-worth. And then just when things seem to be looking up,
For Larissa and Gabe,
the story throws us a curveball.
that kiss in the parking lot,
Total surprise.
a burst of passion.
Neither of them saw it coming.
It changes everything.
Now they have to face their feelings head on.
Do they take a chance on each other?
Or risk losing it all.
And remember, this is Crystal Lake.
That kiss won't stay secret for long.
The gossip will spread,
And the consequences could be serious.
especially with their jobs.
And Gabe's past.
It's a reminder that even private moments can become public.
Especially in a place where everyone's watching.
And judging.
And then bam!
Another twist.
Annie's hit and run
Shocking.
leaves us with so many questions.
Was it an accident?
Or did Kurt try to hurt her?
The story keeps us in suspense.
Annie's fate is uncertain.
And Kurt's violence could escalate.
It's a chilling reminder that for abuse victims,
The danger is always there.
and the consequences can be devastating.
It's like a storm cloud over Crystal Lake.
Casting a shadow of fear over everything. When we left off, Annie was fighting for her life after that awful hit and run.
It's a tough scene.
It makes you wonder if she'll even make it.
And if Kurt will finally face consequences.
But the story doesn't wrap things up so neatly.
That's part of what makes it so powerful.
It's like real life.
There's no guarantee of a happy ending.
And the story shows how this kind of trauma affects everyone.
Not just Annie.
Like Larissa,
Oh yeah, she's pouring her heart into helping.
but she's reliving her own past in the process.
It's like she's trying to save Annie and a part of herself at the same time.
And then there's Gabe.
Right.
He's dealing with his own issues.
While trying to support both of them.
He's come a long way.
Hasn't he?
Remember how cynical he was in the beginning?
Totally different now.
Now he's looking for connection
Okay.
with Larissa.
And even at church.
That church scene was really interesting.
I thought so too.
That sermon about forgiveness.
It was like a turning point for Gabe.
It made him question if holding on to all that anger was really doing him any good.
He realized forgiveness wasn't about letting his ex off the hook.
Yeah, it was about freeing himself from that pain.
Powerful stuff.
And it's something we can all relate to.
Whether we've experienced abuse or not,
Holding on to anger can feel protective.
but it keeps us stuck.
But the story also shows that forgiveness isn't easy.
It's messy.
It takes time and courage.
Sometimes even when we forgive,
The scars are still there.
like with Larissa and Gabe,
They're trying to move on.
but their pasts still haunt them.
And those shadows are especially dark when it comes to Annie.
We don't know for sure what happens to her.
The story leaves us hanging,
It's frustrating.
but it's real.
We don't always get answers.
And justice isn't always served.
It makes us think about the reality of domestic abuse.
There's no easy fix.
No guaranteed happy ending.
And we're left feeling anxious.
Knowing that Annie's future is uncertain.
And Kurt might never be held accountable.
It's a reminder that the fight against domestic violence continues.
But there are glimmers of hope in this story, too.
There are
Larissa's dedication to helping Annie.
Gabe facing his demons.
Those little acts of kindness we see throughout the story.
They remind us that even in the darkest times,
Human connection can make a difference.
and that's the biggest takeaway from healing her heart.
We all have a role to play in stopping abuse,
Whether it's listening to someone who's struggling
speaking out against injustice.
or supporting organizations that help
We can all make a difference.
in creating a world where everyone feels safe and valued.
It's been a powerful journey exploring healing her heart.
It has.
We've learned about the complexities of domestic abuse
The importance of empathy.
and the healing power of human connection.
Thank you for joining us.
We hope this deep dive has left you with a deeper understanding of these important issues.